Hi, I'm Ginny with the Southwest Florida Eagle Cam, and we're here today at Crow to go talk to Dr. Barron about Ozzy and get all your questions answered.
So thank you for making time to talk to us today about Ozzy. I guess we can start from the top and say what originally happened to Ozzy and why was he admitted to Crow?
So Ozzy actually had a fracture of the bones in his shoulder girdle, so kind of like your collarbone that you see here, and then another bone that supports this joint, this shoulder joint. And probably that injury usually occurs when they're either hit by a car or sometimes if they hit a building. So they've actually just had blunt trauma to this area, and because he was down so close to the road, my best guess is probably hit by a car.
And then there's been a lot of, I guess, debate out there on Facebook and social media. Will he be able to fly again after rehabilitation?
These types of injuries do have a fairly good prognosis for repair. Took us a while in avian medicine to sort that out. We used to think that the best way to repair these was surgically. So we would actually go in with like bone plates or IM pins or things like that to try to repair them. And what we found was that didn't work at all. And the best management for this type of injury is very conservative management, where you just immobilize that shoulder joint and you let the bones begin to heal on their own. And so when you see pictures of Ozzy right now, you'll see he's kind of wearing like a splint that wraps around his wing and his body, and that's basically what we're doing. Now, there can be some problems that develop if you put a splint on like that and just leave it. So what we actually have to do is every few days we anesthetize him, and then we stretch that wing out, supporting his shoulder joint to make sure he's not losing mobility in his joints, and that the wing web that stretches across there doesn't actually begin to contract up, because if you leave those bandages on too long, you can develop a lot of secondary complications. And but luckily, this very conservative method of management has been proven to be very highly effective. Now, Ozzy's only big risk is that he's such a heavy bodied bird. So for lighter raptors, we have an excellent prognosis with them returning to flight. And luckily, when you look at his x-rays, it shows the bone is not badly displaced. So it is broken, but the pieces are fairly close together. So I think he has a very good chance of returning to full flight and returning.
What will happen at the end of rehabilitation if it's determined that Ozzy is unable to fly properly to survive in the wild?
So generally in those cases, we do notify federal authorities and let them know we have an animal that looks like, for whatever reason, is not going to be able to survive in the wild. And Fish and Wildlife is the one who helps us make that decision. So the veterinarian on the case would discuss that with the federal official that's responsible for our region, and they might make one of several calls. The first call potentially might be a transfer, so maybe you might transfer this animal to the University of Florida or someplace where in theory they might be able to do something different or better. I think the likelihood of that is low because of the type of injury. Like what we're doing now is considered cutting edge and the best that can be done. The other possibility that they will offer you is they will say, no, we feel like this animal is in too much discomfort, it should be euthanized or put to sleep, so that there's no possibility that would suffer. But the most likely possibility would be a lifetime in captivity. So it would go into an educational program like at a zoo or a wildlife facility like this one that has an educational program where then people could learn about bald eagles and the importance of not driving your car too fast, or looking out for these animals if they're flying by.
Oh, definitely. No, great. Is there an estimated release date if Ozzy's rehabilitation goes well?
Generally, these types of fractures usually heal by 6 weeks. However, one of the important things we have to do is make sure that Ozzy isn't just healed, but that he is fully capable of flying and hunting for food and doing all the things he would normally do. And so he will go through a rigorous course of physical therapy to try to work him back up to the ability to survive in the wild. And so really how soon Ozzy goes back out depends on Ozzy. If he makes really good progress really quickly, then he can probably leave fairly soon. If it's taking him a little longer, we put them in a flight cage that's about the size of a football field, so it's an enormous flight cage, and we evaluate their flight. And so we look to make sure it's perfect. It has a corner in it, so we look to make sure they can actually corner and fly the right way. And so we'll do all of that assessment, and then that will determine when he is released.
No, that's great. And I know everyone is very concerned about Ozzy, but Harriet and E6 as well. Do you think they'll be okay without Ozzy in the nest?
It is always really hard for eaglets in their first year. They have a fairly low survival rate at around 50% will survive their first year. So I can't make any guarantees about E6. I think with Harriet still there because of the age that he's at, where he's right there, where he is ready to kind of get out of the nest and be on his own more. He has a good chance of doing okay. But there's no doubt, both parents caretake, and it is hard to be a mother alone, a single mom. I empathize with where she's at. She will be fine. Whether or not it's going to have any impact on the eaglet, only time will tell. And again, even eaglets that have both parents have a rough time that first year out, and they will depend on their parents for a while past fledging. But at some point they would have to be on their own anyway.
Yep. What will happen if Harriet leaves the nest before Ozzy is released?
So if she does leave the nest area, when he comes back, he'll definitely call for her. If she's anywhere in the vicinity, then she may respond to those calls and come back. But if not, she'll remain single until the next breeding season. So eagles are monogamous. They do mate for life. But if they lose their mate, they will remate again the next breeding season. And in all likelihood, she would come back to the area where she had always been before. And he would also. Eagles are fairly territorial, and they tend to come back to the same nest year after year. So even if they don't get together right away, there's a possibility that they may re-pair up next breeding season, next fall.
Will Harriet remember Ozzy if he's gone for a long period of time?
Absolutely. Birds have incredible memories, and they definitely have seen time and time again that they remember their mates or remember their owners or remember places very, very well. They're very smart.
Okay. Will Ozzy be banded or tracked if and when released?
Not by us, but luckily with the Eagle Cam in place, and because he has some pretty definitive markings, we'll probably know if Ozzy does okay in the next year. We do not have a federal banding permit here, and there's no one in the immediate region that does. We're currently applying for a federal banding permit, but I doubt we'll have it by the time Ozzy's ready for release.